Okay, we're just going to do this. Hey, everybody. This is the first Intimate Health Yoga Book Club webinar. Um, I'm so glad you're tuning in. Maybe you're not watching it right now for the live event, but maybe you're watching it later on and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and an open mouth exhale. Two more like that. Inhaling. Let it go. And then one more. Inhale. And release. Okay. Looks like the connection is working now. So we are going to begin. So many of you in the book club I already know. I'm so happy that you're here on this platform because I think it's pretty cool. And a lot of you I don't know. So my name is Courtney, and let me introduce myself. I have my master's of public health. While I was getting my master's, I was focused on primarily sexual health education, specifically disease prevention in community health, meaning looks like we are not connected again, but we'll see if this is working. So while I was getting my master's, I went and did my yoga teacher training, which completely changed my life. And for the first time, I got out of this space and more into my body. So teaching yoga, I found, was one of the most effective ways to promote health education and behavior change, because yoga is different than, teaching someone like eat spinach, do this, to so when I started feeling into my body, I noticed that sex got better. And I was like, what's happening? And then I started having orgasms while I was doing yoga, which is a whole other story. But really, my curiosity for sex and how we talk about sex, especially when it comes to health, changed. So that took me down this road of just working more in women's health. I became a birth, and I realized if we combine sexual health education with yoga and body, really good things can happen. Um, so that's a little bit about me and this book, Come As You Are. Such an amazing book. Like, look at how many tabs I have. I was just freaking out the whole time I was reading part one. I hope you enjoyed it too, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think. I had a few people write in to tell me some things, so let's just start and go over this. Um, Also, this is the first time I'm doing this platform of putting things online, and as long as you can hear me, that's what really matters. And then tell your friends about this. I know that this can be a complete game changer when it comes to your life and your sexual well-being. So let's make this a thing. um, all right, so chapter one in this book, I'm going to start opening this so I can go through it with you. Everyone's genitals are made of the same parts, organized in different ways. No two are alike. I I love that because, especially in this day and age, there's so much um, emphasis on the differences between penis owners and vagina owners. And when it really comes down to it, we're all just humans with these fleshy sexual organs and parts of our bodies that they're the same. And I loved this visual, or 12 weeks in female and male. And then at birth, the female and male. And you can kind of see how this like slow change happens, which as a total nerd, I'm obsessed with this. I think it's super cool. Um, and a big thing that I thought was really interesting about penises. Hold on, let me find it because I think it's really cool. Um, the the homologs, which are traits that have the same biological origins, though they may have different functions. So on females, it's the outer lips, the labia majora, and on males, it's a scrotum, which is like, ugh, duh, okay. Like we have the labia majora and they have a scrotum. These parts don't just look superficially alike, they are developed from the equivalent fetal tissue. If you look closely at a scrotum, which is the testicles or the balls, You'll notice a seam running up the center, the scrotal raphe. That's where his scrotum would have split into labia if he had developed female genitals instead, which is so fascinating. Like, it's literally the same thing. So it's, if you see that little line on the testicles, it just means basically that that would have been where the labia are, which is so cool. Like, can you believe that? I had one person write in, one of the readers wrote in, the scrotal raphe, the seam running, so cool. And I so agree with that. Science is so cool, and we need more research in the field of sexual health. So we'll get into more of that soon. Another really cool thing about penises, and maybe I'm just fascinated with this because most of my research is in women's sexual health. So again, very biased over here. So I want to hear more of what fascinated you guys too. So if a penis has been circumcised, that is, had its foreskin surgically removed, there's very often a color change midway down the shaft. That's because the skin at the top of the shaft is actually the inner foreskin. Because the color change is sometimes evident only after puberty, guys have asked me if they did something to make the color change. But nope, that's just how some penises look. Bless them. Love that. So, yeah, so fascinating to hear that they're just the same parts arranged in different ways. Have a lot less visual connection to their parts because it's just harder to see, obviously, right? Um, like anatomically speaking, the penis is out, it's external, and then the vagina is internal. We can see the vulva, but even looking at the vulva, which is the lips and all the external parts of the vagina, it's difficult. Like, I mean, like, I have big boobs, and like if I had more of a belly, it would even be harder to see, like right down here. So it's important to look. Like, we as women, we are definitely more disconnected to that area of our body than men. So that is important. Um, and then, as with all penises and vulvas, everyone is different, especially the labia, the majora minora. It looks completely different. So I really like that she emphasized, don't compare yourself to something you see on TV or porn. You are perfect just the way you are, even if it doesn't look like you're perfectly shaved and tucked in. I know labiaplasty is a growing field in the medical and plastic surgery world, and I hate that because, if, like she said, if there's nothing wrong with your body, then don't change anything. If you're not in pain or it's not causing you like insane amounts of discomfort, you're perfect the way you are. And doing surgical fixes like that can sometimes cause more scar tissue and lead to other issues. So best to avoid that and start to love the way you are. Um, so, from this chapter, I think the biggest thing was look at yourself and love yourself. If you grew up thinking that you were perfect and beautiful and capable of love and you really loved your body for the way it is, you wouldn't even be bothered to compare yourself to anyone else. However, we grew up in a world where, looks and just comparing lives is really fueled our society. So really try to focus, like, make your sexuality an internal self discovery. So start by just looking at yourself. And I love how she had a practice of just finding your clitoris. Like, everyone talks about find the clit, but like find your clitoris, not just like with my hands, like look. Um, One reader for the Intimate Health Yoga Book Club wrote in, she said, 41 and I found my clit. Oh, and I bought and used my first vibrator. Part one made me realize I am not alone. That's everything. That's all I want. We can just like end this now. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Um, so that's and oh, just kidding, squirting. So the thing is, um, this book was written, it was published in 2015. So she did mention the shortcomings of sexual health research and the lack thereof. So research into female ejaculation has just kind of like amped up in the past few years. And there was a study in 2015 that she did not include in this book when it came to squirting. She mentioned that in some women, the Skene's glands produce fluid, which is how some women ejaculate. Female ejaculation, squirting, has gotten attention lately, in part because more science has been done, and in part because it's featured in porn. So, people are asking, how do I learn to squirt, or how do I stop squirting? So I don't know about you guys, but I'll share personally. I squirt, and I actually didn't start squirting until I felt really comfortable in with my sexuality. And I think, that has a lot to do with communicating what I wanted and loving myself. However, what is squirting? And so the Skene's glands, like she mentioned, actually recently they found that those only produce about like 1 to 2 teaspoons of fluid. So if you've ever squirted or seen someone squirt, porn is actually like fake, so that's not a reliable source. But when I have a squirting orgasm, it's a lot of fluid. Like it's not like 2 teaspoons. So the Skene's glands and the Bartholin's glands, those are the fluids that the turn on initial sexual arousal fluid. Um, when you're actually ejaculating like large amounts of liquid, and I'm talking like, I want to say like maybe a cup, right? And it depends. Every body is different. Everyone who squirts can ejaculate different amounts. But the most recent study, I'm going to read it to you because I think it's so fascinating. That they're just doing these studies now, and they're still part of a mystery of it. So in 2015, there were researchers in France at a private hospital, and they recruited 7 women to come in who were self-reported squirters, right? So they came in and they first asked the participants to submit a urine sample. So they submitted a urine sample just to see like, okay, what's in your pee before we go into this and see and then compare the difference between the ejaculate and pee. Sorry. So they submitted a urine sample, and then their pelvis was scanned to with an ultrasound. Then the women were left to either masturbate or have sex with a partner until they were just about to climax. So these women were literally like getting turned on in a lab setting, which I love research. I think it's so cool. But I just kind of imagine like how difficult that must have been, or not, for these women, or just how like interesting that is, right? So then right as they were about to climax, so they didn't climax yet, the researchers came back in. So this was done, in the matter of like 20 minutes. Like it wasn't a long time after they had just emptied their bladders. So then they scanned with an ultrasound again right before they climaxed. And guess what happened? The scans performed on them as they were climaxing. Oh, sorry. So one last scan was taken of their pelvises afterwards to get a view of the bladder. Oddly enough, so one last scan was taken of their pelvises afterwards to get a view of the bladder. Oddly enough, they had emptied their bladders before the big event. The scan taken just before they climaxed revealed that the bladders had been completely refilled again. No other reason than the women had been sexually stimulated. So the bladder fills up. Then they have a climax, and then guess what? The bladder is empty. They did another scan. So this leads everyone to believe that it must be pee, right? Actually, no. So then they compared the samples that had been bagged up during climax to the urine samples collected at the beginning of the study. And they found that in 2 of the 7 women, they were identical. So it was the same pee, the same liquid that came from their bodies. However, how many of them? In the remaining 5 women, they found an enzyme called prostatic specific antigen, or PSA. So that's actually produced in men for the reason, or by the prostate gland, and that actually helps the sperm swim. Um, and then in females, I've actually heard that PSA helps to, it also helps to assist the sperm into the cervix, right? So this is produced mainly in females by the Skene's glands. So are they working together, the ejaculate and the PSA and the Skene's glands? Yes, probably, but they're still not sure. Um, they don't know why so few women are able to do it. They're not sure, like they're not sure why some are have ejaculate with PSA. They're not sure why some it's just exactly identical to urine. So what they are sure of is that all these women did empty their bladders. So it's actually kind of cool because, in a regular, I just peed and then I have to pee again, that wouldn't happen for a while unless you were drinking like a ton of water. But these women were just being turned on. So it's so cool that the body is actually like pulling liquid into the bladder and then releasing it. So another thing is it depends on, I've also heard from other researchers that it just depends on how hydrated you are. It depends on the functioning of your pelvic floor muscles because they do help with the expulsion of the liquid. The liquid does come from the urethra. Um, but, how diluted is this liquid? If it just filled the bladder in a matter of 20 minutes, then maybe it's not full of waste from the kidneys, right? So there's still a lot of mystery around this topic, which is so fascinating to me. So if you guys are scientists, please do some more research into sexual health. There's also a woman named Dr. Zhana, Zhana, and she has a cool podcast. She's trying to do some more research with surveys and anecdotal evidence from people. So you can actually go online and take that survey to help figure out the mystery of squirting. So yeah, that just stuck out to me because it's one of my favorite topics. It's page 31. She mentions it if you guys want to reread it. And then you can Google like squirting search and all this stuff will come up that's recent. So that's a fun fact. Let's keep going. So chapter 2, the author discusses the importance of the 1964 work of the researchers Masters and Johnson at Wash U in St. Louis and how they came up with the 4-phase model of sexual response. So I know when I teach sexual health, and it is, I want to say like it is one of them arousal, but it does not encompass the psychological response. So like she mentions that desire is not even in this 4-phase model. I just lost my train of thought. It's fine. So desire was missing. So they needed more of the psychological puzzle piece. So she went into more research around the psychological and the cognitive meaning and desire fueled arousal, right? So she, in the 1990s at the Kinsey Institute, they started to figure out the dual control model. So this is, I think, one of the biggest things for me reading this book that I was like, wow. So this idea of an accelerator and an inhibitor or a brake system. Sorry, she says accelerator and brake. So sexual excitation system, that's the accelerator of your sexual response. So whatever it is that is turning you on, right? So these are sexually relevant stimuli to you. It doesn't mean it's relevant to anyone else. So things you see, hear, smell, touch, taste, or imagine. And then the sexual inhibition system, this is your sexual brake. So this is what tells you to just turn off. So whether that is turning off before the act, like just stops you from even going there, or even during, and that the belief I'm not going to get there, oh, something's happening, or what is that noise, oh my god, right? So like all those things can turn us off. So what she really basically goes into the rest of part one is identifying your own personal um, accelerators, and which I love. Um, Somebody wrote in the sexual excitation system, the accelerator, and sexual inhibition system, brakes. I've never thought of sexuality in terms of how sensitive our accelerators and brakes are. And this was so eye opening for me. I've had points where my brakes were almost non existent, and points where they were so sensitive that I could hardly ever get turned on. Um, this is big, especially for people struggling to experience orgasm. Um, and she noticed, indeed, a common mistake made by people who are struggling with orgasm or desire is assuming that the problem is lack of accelerator, but it's more likely that the problem is too much brake. So, instead of thinking like, what else noticed, indeed, a common mistake made by people who are struggling with orgasm or desire is assuming that the problem is lack of accelerator, but it's more likely that the problem is too much brake. So, instead of thinking like, what else can I do? Like maybe I need to go get lingerie, or maybe he needs to do this or she needs to do this, and then I'll be turned on. It's more of the what's stopping me in here? What is the brakes that, what is making me break when it comes to arousal? So, you know, I would say the biggest thing that I notice with my clients is stress and anxiety. Like literally, I don't want to like say almost everyone, but a lot of people have stress and anxiety that really inhibits their potential to experience arousal, orgasm, and even desire. Um, and that, it breaks my heart, but it's also, it's hopeful because I've never met someone where I'm like, who can't orgasm, that I'm like, oh, it's never going to happen for you ever, ever. I believe that everyone has the potential to experience orgasm in one way, shape, or form. And just like she's saying, it's just about getting to know yourself and identifying things that, like she said, they're even lower than the subconscious. Like these are like very deep within us. Um, and then, I like that she throws in the difference between boys and girls when they're learning what turns them on, and they're learning what to associate with sex and what to associate with don't get turned on. So on page 65, she said, in the same way, well, I guess boys, they, teaching their accelerator what constitutes a sexually relevant stimulus is a fairly straightforward process of categorizing as sexy those things that are associated with erection, right? So, penis owners, you have this thing between your legs, and you know when it's hard and when it's not. That is like the easiest thing. For girls, it's a little trickier. Um, the sexy category in a little girl's mind is populated not with erection related stimuli, but with social stimuli, which it just makes me nervous for myself and all the other women in my life and little girls growing up now. Because, in the same way, girls learn what's sexually relevant not because their genitals do something so obvious and new that they can't help learning from it, but rather by paying attention to environment, especially to the other person there with them in the sexually relevant situation. Right? So that's big. And it's, those of you with young girls and raising women, it's really just about identifying like what that is. Like what is sexually new? What is safe, what is unacceptable, what is like, where are your boundaries, right? I mean, that's a whole other topic that we can get into, but it's really interesting to note that the sexual that we learn, it's a communication, it's the sexual it's a language that we never learned, is how to communicate what we want and what we desire sexually. So very interesting. um Another reader wrote in, I also love her discussing the subject of context and how much that can affect the same in our perception of that stimuli. People have a higher sex drive when they're anxious or depressed. I related to that. Whereas my partners in the past have flatlined when anxious or depressed. So I relate to that, her relating to that. Personally, when I'm stressed out, I'm really horny. Like the more stressed I am, the hornier I am. So I was reading this going like, "Oh my god, I'm normal." Right? Like this is other people are like this. Um in the back she has a table. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but it's page 349, this table. And this is from a research study. I don't know the year. It doesn't say it. I could look that up later, but um there's a research study, relationship between negative mood and sexuality. So it's saying for depression and anxiety and the difference between men and women. So in depressed people, out of all the depressed people, in the men who are depressed, 10% experience an increase in sexual arousal, while women, 9.5% of them experience an increase in sexual arousal, which is not a huge difference. But who for depression, for depressed men and women, 35% of men experience a decrease in sexual arousal, while 50% of women who are depressed experience a decrease in arousal, right? So women are way more prone to being affected by depression than men. And then with anxiety, another huge thing that I see all the time and deal with personally, in men, 25% of anxious men experience an increase in sexual arousal when they're anxious, and then 23% of anxious women will experience an increase. So again, not a huge difference, but then when you go to the decrease, so how does when anxiety decreases sexual arousal, it's 17% of men experience a decrease and 34% of women. So both of those, it's just about double. Um, so that's huge. Like if you were a woman experiencing depression or anxiety, it's the science, or at least in this study, shows that it really does make a difference for your sexual arousal. So I think the biggest one statement that she said that really I thought was a powerful one. She said, nope, that's not it. Where is it? Page 68, if you're following along with me at home. The short answer is reduce your stress, be affectionate toward your body, and let go of the false ideas about how sex is supposed to work to create space in your life for how sex actually works. So that's it. And I really like that. Um, yeah. So anxiety and depression are real and they affect most clients that I work with, including myself. I can speak for myself. Like when I said sex or stress just makes me horny. And for my boyfriend, it's the opposite. So for us, it's really just about communicating what we need when we need it. And it's also, we have to respect each other and where we are. So we do definitely check in if you experience that with your partner at all. We check in before we go into lovemaking because it's, energetically from like a tantric perspective, you got to know with your partner like where they are, because if they're feeling stressed but they're not telling you and then you go into sex, you're going to feel that and it's going to feel different and you might not even be able to communicate how it feels different in your body, but it will. So very important to be in tune with your emotions before, during, and after sex. And it changes, like she explains. So let's talk about chapter 3, which is the context. Your emotional brain. Research, and she does mention that research is really difficult in this exact field because what women will say on surveys and in focus groups can't tell us everything that happens in real life, obviously. Um, but page 77, I like the examples that she gives. I think are really good with the people that she works with. Um, she said they had replicated the external circumstances, but not the context. So let's say you went to this hotel and you had a beautiful night and it was like the most mind-blowing sex you've ever had. And then you go back a year later and you're like, we're going to do it again, but it's not the same, right? So what happened is that they replicated the external circumstances, but not the context. So that was kind of a bummer, obviously. Um, but it's not, it's again just saying like, okay, what is the context? So maybe in that situation, life happened, and that year you're dealing with multiple, I don't know, issues like with life, right? Like work stress, family stress, illnesses. There's a million things that can happen in a year. Um, so it is very important to be aware of that when the context changes. Um, let's see what else. Oh, hey, you can come in. Okay. Where is it? Oh, great. Okay, bye. I'm at my sister's place because we were afraid that we couldn't find enough reliable internet in the van. So my boyfriend just walked in to walk her dog. So I'm kind of jealous. It's fine though. Okay, let's go into the next thing. So, so page 87. So she talks about the ring, the emotional one ring. But I mean, I think that's cute. I guess I'm just not like a Lord of the Rings fan. So I will just talk about it in like the emotional processing part of your brain. How about that? Let me turn this light on. Well, if I can. Um, let's see. So the sequence of emotional of what is it? Expecting, eagerness, and enjoying. So the sequence works this way. Something sexual relevant happens and your brain goes, "Hey, that's sexually relevant." That's expecting. And if the context is right, your brain also goes, "Hey, that's nice. That's enjoying." And if the stimulus is nice enough, your brain goes, "Ooh, go get more of that." That's eagerness. So when all of those are in line, all three of these are context dependent, obviously. So if you're expecting, eagerness, and enjoying substrates are busy coping with stress or attachment issues, then sexually relevant stimuli may not be perceived as sexy at all. So again, it's checking in with yourself, seeing where your brain is, seeing where your emotional state is, and then pursuing. Um, I had someone write in, I really, really loved how, oh, sorry, we're not there yet. I guess my biggest point here, oh, my biggest point here is that your brain is your largest sexual organ. Like it can bring you into a state of orgasm, but it can also bring you out of a state of orgasm. So you need to really hone in on this part, which is why I teach yoga and meditation for sexual wellness, because I think it's one of the most important and powerful ways of empowering ourselves to take control of our sexual well-being and our desire and our arousal. So meditate and do yoga. I'll give you some more homework for that in a little bit. Let me just find a light and turn this on. I told you I would embarrass myself a little bit during this book club. Woo. Okay, that should work. Oh, this is so bright. Okay, that's good for now. Um, mic back on. Okay, so let's see. One other important thing that I thought was worthy of noting is page 92. In the right context, sexual behavior is arguably the most pleasurable experience a human can have. It can bond us with our partners, flood us with happy chemicals, satisfy deep biological urges, and transport us to spiritual heights. For real, though, it can. Talk about Tantra. In the wrong context, though, it can literally feel like death. Depending on the context, sex can vary almost infinitely, from delicious to disgusting, from playful to painful. And because of the dual control mechanism, sometimes it's two conflicting things at the same time. So I think I don't think I need to say anything, is that sex is so powerful. It can connect us with people, but it can also cause intense trauma when it's done in the wrong way. Um, it says, as long as a woman is attending to her well being and her partner's, it doesn't matter what the context is, as long as it brings her pleasure. And this is where I like to remind people of drop your expectations and surprise yourself. Try new things because you'll never know until you try and like really get into just knowing yourself sexually and what turns you on and what turns you off, and just really owning that. And I love the sexy and the not so sexy context, how she has this whole like workbook. I didn't fill it in here because I felt like this little box was not enough to describe my sexual experiences. I don't know if anyone else had that problem. However, I thought it was so cool. And it goes back to how we learn to communicate. I hope this isn't too loud. Okay. How we learn to communicate our desires and our sexuality. Because, you know, I know, at least I didn't, but many of us didn't, we're not taught how to communicate sex and how to communicate pleasure as we're discovering our sexuality. This is not something that we are given the template for, the language for, even. Um, so I love that she just spelled it all out. Body image, the characteristics of what turned you on, smell, mental state, physical health. Um, is there work-related stress, family stress, holidays, occasions, um, distant sex? Was it phone chat? Um, what are the relationship characteristics? Trust. Was there a power dynamic? Was it feeling desired? Right. So there's like this whole list of things to consider, and it's good to know yourself in a deeper way for the purposes of enjoying sex even more. Um, Someone wrote in, I really, really loved how she had us write out a few positive sexual experiences and details about each experience, our mental state during that experience, our partner, and our relationship with that partner, and what about it made it good versus writing out the same for sexual experiences we thought of as not so good. Writing out the details of these experiences made me notice small details that made the big picture more pleasurable than I would have noticed without writing them down. The big takeaway I got from my good experiences was anticipation. I like to be teased for a long time before any serious sexy time happens. See, that's amazing. That's like such great self-discovery. So I encourage you to do all this now. So, your homework. Number 1, fill out the sexy context and not so sexy context questionnaire. It's a good exercise for developing communication. And then even communication with yourself. Like this doesn't have to be for someone else. This is just a way for you to know exactly what you need and what you desire. Like amazing. Um, and then to add to that, as a very sex positive nerd, I like to approach things with, a research minded um, approach to sexuality and to sex. So I literally have nights where they're like my sex experiment nights. And The first thing is that you've got to plan it, right? So don't like spring this up on yourself or just do it like out of the blue when you're trying to connect with someone. You can do this with yourself, but number one is schedule a time to experiment, to experiment with yourself. And then you're going to try no more than three different things. So these three different things can be your environment. So try different places, lighting, music. You can try, um, anything. Get creative with your environment. Like maybe you go into the shower, maybe you go, maybe you try it on the floor on a yoga mat. Who knows, right? You can get as whatever you want to try. If you haven't done it before, then it's safe to say you should try it. Like, why not? Um, Another thing that you can change is the physical approach. So, this is like when it actually comes down to physical arousal. Try different things like sex positions, switching it up. Maybe you're only used to missionary, which is totally fine. It's one of my favorite ways. But try like reverse cowgirl or um, try sitting on a chair and trying a different position there, right? Um, you can also play around with toys and temperature. Um, Toys, actually, the Ona, if you're looking to try something that's not vibrate, it's not a vibrator, but the Ona, I actually have a code for it, so you can find that on my website. Um, they're it's you can think of them almost like cock rings, but they're silicone rings that are pretty thick and they go around the base of the penis. And this is for people who experience painful sex. So they'll have their partner put on the ring so that it stops you from penetrating. So let's see examples. Here's a pen, this is the penis. And then I put these rings around. It comes with like a set of four. So like my finger is a ring, let's do three of these. So I can only, when I penetrate, I'm only going in that deep, right? Instead of all the way. So you can imagine this will actually protect your cervix. Your cervix is highly sensitive. So if you're feeling that like pain, like upon penetration, that can really help. So try different toys. Oh, that's one of them. And then the mental approach. So this is just really important to be aware of. So number three is, I'm stressed now and now I'm aware. So step three is, changing where you are mentally. So if you are stressed out, instead of going right for it, close your eyes and meditate before you even go into your sexual experience. Like meditate, feel in your body where you're tense, maybe dropping your shoulders, relaxing your jaw. Um, just really drop into that mental state and then see if you can say, okay, you know what? I don't have to worry about work right now. What I do have to worry about is how I feel. And that's all that matters. And hopefully that can help you experiment and see what works and what doesn't. So that's a big homework assignment is to go sex experiment. So um and you do that in three steps. Number one, plan it, like set aside a time. Number two, try three new things maximum. It could just be one new thing. That's fine too. But one to three new things. And then step three of the whole process that you need to be aware of is no expectations. So even if you're like, I'm going to try this whole thing, blah, 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 um, no expectations. If halfway through you're like, this isn't working, then it's not working. And now you know. So zero expectations in in research, that's like bias, or it's like approaching something with a bias, like, oh, it's gonna come out this way, which is not good research. So I want you to all be good researchers and experiment in a good, healthy, logical way. No expectations. Another I want to give you breathing techniques and yoga poses. So if you go onto my YouTube channel, which you already are on, so you can find legs up the wall pose. So I'm choosing legs up the wall pose as it's really one of the easiest things you can do, and I recommend basically everyone do this at least once a day. So literally all you do is lay on the ground and put your legs up either the wall or a chair. And if it's on a chair or like a couch, Your legs will be bent so that your calves are resting on top of the chair, right? And what this does is it helps to relax your lower back. It helps to relax your pelvic floor muscles. And just by keeping your legs up, it reverses like the pressure systems in your body because typically your feet are lower than your hips and your heart all day. And as soon as you put them up above your head and your heart, you're going to feel different. So, like, your inflammation will likely go down. Actually, in the past, I've done this when I'm hungover. And if you know how you feel like kind of inflamed and like your rings don't fit in the morning, if you're like inflamed from being hungover, or maybe that's just me. Um, but if you're feeling swollen, you can put your legs up the wall, and that will help to jumpstart your lymph system to drain the excess fluid. And another fun fact is if you do tend to squirt, if you put your legs up the wall for like 5 minutes, that will help the fluid drain from your legs down to your bladder so that you can go pee before you have sex so you don't squirt as much, right? So that just kind of helps to get rid of excess fluid in your body, putting your legs up the wall for 5 minutes and then going pee. And the same thing for bedtime. If you wake up a lot during the night and you're peeing a lot, like put your legs up the wall at least 5 minutes before you go to bed and then pee and then go to bed. And hopefully your bladder will be empty enough to last through the night. Um, and it's also good for relaxing your pelvic floor muscles, which we didn't get into that much, but I'm sure we will in another future book club meeting. But helps to relax your pelvic floor. So if you are stressed, do that. I also recommend doing legs up the wall before you have sex because it's, for me, I do it and I put my phone away and I cut distractions and I really make that my time to connect with myself. So if you need an excuse and a reason to connect with yourself before sex, do that. And meditating, even 5 minutes. And if you are stressed and you want to have sex or you're anxious, set a timer on your phone and then put it away, obviously. But set a timer for 5 minutes and then close your eyes and breathe. 5 minutes, that's it. And what you're going to focus on is your breath. And that's it. And you're just observing your breath. You're not changing it. You're just trying to breathe deeply and be aware. And now, orgasmic breathing is my favorite technique ever. There's an IGTV video on my Instagram that describes how to do orgasmic breathing. And it's also in the Pelvic Floor and Pleasure workshop on the online studio. So that's detailed how to do orgasmic breathing, but I can explain it for you now. And what this does is it unites body, mind, and breath, which is exactly what you want for stress relief because it helps you connect with yourself. So it works your pelvic floor muscles in women and men. And it's important for orgasm and pleasure in women and men. Like, just because you didn't have babies, a lot of people have this belief like, oh, I've never had babies, I don't want to, or I'm a dude, so I don't have to worry about my pelvic health, which the opposite is true. Everyone needs to worry about it and just be aware. So what this does is it energetically, it also helps to bring sexual energy up into your body. And sexual energy in tantric philosophy lives in your pelvis, in your root chakra. So we want to bring that up so we can feel more alive and just like exuberant in our lives. So try this with me. You're going to purse your lips like you're breathing through a straw. And we do that because prana, or energy, is the same as breath in yoga. So when we control the amount of breath that comes in our body, that means we can better control the energy that's coming into our body. So you purse your lips and then you squeeze your pelvic floor muscles at the same time. So just like you're closing your vagina shut or stopping your pee and then lifting. So in penis owners, just like you're lifting your penis up. And for vagina owners, it's like you're pulling something up inside of you. So you start with the pursed lips, you start with the pelvic floor, and then you bring your belly in, drop your shoulders back, straight in the spine. So that means just a slight tuck of the chin. So like here, my neck is nice and curved here. Straight. Straighter the better because alignment with energy. So you sit quietly, close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and an open mouth exhale. I didn't open my mouth, sorry. Let's do that again. Inhaling and open mouth. And then purse your lips, squeeze your pelvic floor, belly in, shoulders back, chin tucked, hold. So I'm holding, energy is dancing around my head, and now I'm going to imagine it softening down my body. So I relax the lips, relax the shoulders, belly, pelvic floor last. It may be difficult to have that control of engaging the pelvic floor and then relaxing it last. Just try your best and just try to slow down that process so you can just soften the entire body. But that's the most important thing. You're engaging and then relaxing. And that just helps for better sexual functioning because we want strong pelvic floor muscles and relaxed ones. So let's do 3 together to practice. Ready? Close your eyes. We're doing it for real this time. Purse your lips and inhale. Squeezing the pelvic floor, belly in, shoulders drop, tucking the chin. And then relaxing shoulders, belly, and then pelvic floor. Purse your lips. Straighten. Sometimes I get chills here. Energy is dancing, and then you let the energy melt over your body and relax. Last time. Holding it, and then relaxing, melting. Good. Shake it out. So I want you to try doing that at least once a day. It helps me focus on my body and my breath so that I'm a little bit more connected to my body before I have sex. So if you want to try that before you have sex, do that. And I like to recommend doing 13 because 13, that's a lot, and that really helps to change your state of mind and to bring you into a more present, embodied state. So go try all these new things. Reach out if you have any questions. I'm here to help. And stay tuned for the next book club meeting, which will discuss part 2. So keep reading, my little sexy book club nerds. And fun announcement, in January, if you have a vagina, this is going to be a vagina owner's experience. I'm going to have a 4-week immersion to basically have better orgasms. Like, I want you to experience a whole process of things that you can do to improve your sexual function. So that will basically entail 5 video sessions similar to this, but probably more involved and more interactive. So we'll have 5 video sessions, and then each week you're going to get a lot of homework and things to try at home. So this is going to be a variation between like sexual self-discovery, different healthy habits that you can do to improve your sexual well-being, and yoga and meditation. So I think that's one of the coolest things is we're going to hold each other accountable to do yoga and meditation every day because science proves that that makes a difference in overall well-being, not just sexual well-being. But these are all meditations based or focused on your sexual well-being. So I'm so excited about it. If you are interested, definitely email me. It's Courtney@intimatehealthyoga.com. And it will likely start on the full moon in January, which I believe is around the 12th. You'll hear more about it, I'm sure, if you're on my mailing list. So I'm so excited to share that experience with you because I think it's going to be amazing. And I can't wait. I already have a few people that are so pumped about it. So it's just like a bunch of women coming together similar to this. You do it at home, and then you have access to the whole Intimate Health online yoga studio, which just has a ton of yoga videos. So you can do it on your own at your own time. That's it. Definitely message me any insights or anything that you found helpful, or things I can do to improve the book club forum. I'll definitely get lighting better and get a better camera. But yeah, thanks guys and have an amazing sexy day. Stay sexy, okay?